Good afternoon. Please come forward and make yourselves comfortable. And if we could get introductions, please, before we begin. Appreciate it.
I'm Louise Bailey, and I'm the Executive Officer for the Board of Registered Nursing.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey.
And I'm Ray Mullell, the President of the Board.
Thank you, Mr. Mello.
And I'm Michael Jackson. I'm the Vice President of the Board.
Mr. Jackson, thank you for being here, Vice President.
And Stacy Barum, Assistant Executive Officer of the Board.
Stacy, thank you. Very, very good. Vice President. Wonderful. So if we could get a brief overview, and then I know some responses to some of the issues that were raised in the
Fine, I will do
Sunset
that.
Review. Thank you.
Yes. To start off, to let you know that the Board of Registered Nursing, we have been in existence now since 1905. That's when they first came about for regulations. And then in 1939, the Nursing Practice Act was established to describe the practice of nursing. As you know, we are a governmental agency, and we were established by law to protect the public by regulating the practice of registered nurses. The BRN is responsible for implementation and enforcing of the Nursing Practice Act, and the laws related to nursing education as well, licensure, and also discipline. And also our mission of this board is that to protect the health and safety of consumers and promote quality RNs in the state of California. And the Board of Registered Nursing, we protect the public by setting educational standards for nursing programs, which prepare individuals to become licensed RNs. And we also approve all California nursing programs that meet the educational standards. Right now, we have 143 pre-licensure nursing programs and 25 advanced practice nursing programs in the state. We also evaluate the licensure applications to determine whether the applicant meets all the licensure requirements. And by that, they have to meet those requirements, and then they have to take a national exam, and it's called the NCLEX, which is the National Council Licensure Examination. And the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, this is the council that all of the boards in the United States and its territories, nursing boards, belong to. This includes RNs, licensed practical nurses, as well as licensed vocational nurses, and it is a nonprofit entity, and that council brings the boards, they look at issues that impact nursing programs throughout the United States. They own the national exam that is administered to all graduates from nursing programs, and even international RNs who come into the United States, they too must take that particular exam. So, and also, we require that everyone is fingerprinted and they have a background check. We were the first program, the first board in the United States in 1990 to require fingerprints, so that checks on all of our applicants. And at this point in time, we have quite a few applicants that we get all through the years, thousands, 20, maybe 25,000 applicants that come before this board. We are the largest RN I should say we have the largest number of RN licensees in the United States. There isn't any other board that has the number that we have. We have over 400,000 licensees. Some of the boards may have 400,000 licensees, but they're comprised of RNs and maybe licensed practical nurses, as well as some certified nursing assistants. So we are the largest one in terms of our licensees. We have over 50,000 licensees, and maybe even more, that reside outside of the state of California, and at some point in time they come into California and they practice. But they must have a license in California. because if anything comes up in terms of need for disciplinary actions, we take disciplinary actions on the license. And so, and many of the licensees that live outside of this state, they love to come to California. They're treated well, they're paid very well, and sometimes they come in the state and they may stay here for 2 or 3 months and go back to their state and they don't have to work again. So we are quite popular in that arena. The other thing that we also do, we issue and we renew license every 2 years. So with over 400,000 licensees, we have maybe 200,000 licensees per year that we renew. That runs us about 16,000 renewals per month. That's a lot of renewals every month. And also, we have within the renewal, there is a $10 fee that all licensees pay, and that goes to our, what we call our RN Scholarship Fund, and that is administered by the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. And these students, they can apply for these funds with the stipulation that they would work in underserved areas. And what happens is that they can submit for the scholarship, and once they complete their nursing program and they are working, they then can be reimbursed, and they can be reimbursed for the funds that they have used for their scholarship, for their training and all, up to a certain amount each year. And like I said, that is administered by the Office of Statewide Health Planning and Development. The other thing that we do, we issue certificates for those nurses in specialty areas, and that's like public health nurses we certify them, nurse practitioners, nurse midwives, clinical nurse specialists, and also nurse anesthetists. And also the board, we maintain a list of the eligible psychiatric and mental health nurses in their specialty. And we maintain this list, and it's on our website, so that these nurses can be reimbursed through the various insurance companies in terms of the counseling services that they may provide. And also, we take disciplinary action on the nurses licensed who violate the Nursing Practice Act. We have approximately over 8,000 complaints that come in per year that we deal with. And out of that, many times, the disciplinary actions end up placing the individuals on probation. We have over 1,200 licensees now that are on probation, and some of those are what we call tolled, meaning that these individuals have been placed on probation and they live outside the state of California, and when they come into, if they want to practice again in the state of California, then they must go through their probation. And also within this program, in 1994, we implemented what we call a cost recovery program. And that program, what it does is that it reimburses the Board of Registered Nursing for expenses that were incurred while we were processing their cases, like for investigations and adjudication by the Attorney General. And also in 1996, we implemented the citation and fine program. And what this does, those technical violations that occur, then what the nurse has to do, we may give them a fine rather than in lieu of the traditional disciplinary process that we go through. So that's part of that process, that takes place in our disciplinary actions. Also, we manage a diversion program, and this program was established back in 1985, and it's an alternative to the discipline process for nurses whose practice may be impaired due to substance abuse disorder or to mental illness. This is a confidential program that protects the public while enabling the nurse to be rehabilitated. And within our program, our diversion program, there are others under the Department of Consumer Affairs, but our program is unlike the others in that when a nurse comes into the program, the nurse must cease working. They cannot work. They must go before what we call a diversion evaluation committee. It's called a DEC. And we have 14 of these DECs throughout the state. Each DEC is composed of 5 members. One is a physician whose specialty is in the area of substance disorder abuses or addictionology. And also we have 3 registered nurses who specialize in this area, and we have a public member. So when that nurse comes into this confidential program, they must go before this DEC so that they can establish a rehabilitation program for them. Now the nurses, how they get there, some of them, 20–30% of them, they self-report themselves. They know they have a substance abuse disorder, so they come into the program. And then the others we get from complaints, it might be from employers or from whomever, and they come into the program. And out of that, we have had over 1,800 successful completions in that program in order to get them back to work. We have believed, the board has over the years, that there is a need, that we believe that you give a person a second chance. And by having a probation program and having a diversion program, you are giving individuals, licensees, a second chance so they can be rehabilitated and get back into the workforce. Before I turn it over to my president here, I'd like to say something about the composition of our board. We have a 9-member board. 4 of the members are public members, and the other 5 are registered nurses. 7 of the members are appointed by the governor. 1 is appointed by the Senate Rules Committee, and the other by the Assembly Speaker. That's how we get our board members. And our board members, we have 4 standing committees that we have. One is the Administrative Committee, and on that committee is the board president, the board vice president, and myself. And that committee, we're the ones who give advice to the board in terms of reorganization, administration, and assignment of the various board members. And then we have the Diversion Discipline Committee, and each one of our committees have board members on them, and the board member chairs the committee. At this point in time, we have 4 board members on each of our committees. We can't have 5 because then we would have a quorum. But the Diversion Discipline Committee, that committee advises the board on the laws and regulations pertaining to enforcement and any diversion issues. Then we have the Education and Licensing Committee, and this committee also advises the board regarding education issues, approval of pre-licensure programs, as well as advanced practice programs. On that committee, the results of the NCLEX scores of the different of the program as an aggregate is also presented. And I must say that the NCLEX scores, which is the national exam that all nurses take in the United States, we get that, and every quarter we can see that whatever it is, say for instance, it's 87.5% is the average passing rate. In California, we're always a little higher than that passing rate. So that goes to the testament that we do have excellent programs in this state that are governed by our directors, our deans, and our faculty, and they do an outstanding job in educating our nurses, our potential nurses. And also that's an attribute to the nursing education consultants that we have on this board as staff. Our nursing education consultants They are assigned to every to a nursing program in the state. So all of the programs have a nursing education consultant. The consultant has maybe 19 or 20 of these programs, and they go out and they monitor the programs, and they wear two hats. The one hat is that of a regulatory hat, in that they assure that the program is implementing the program according to the way they said they would, and they're meeting the laws and the regulations in the Practice Act. If indeed there is some kind of area that they are not meeting that in, then the consultant is there to work with them in terms of being a consultant to that director and to that faculty when they are out of compliance. We work very closely with the deans and directors. We meet annually with all of them together. We also, the nursing education consultant, the supervisors. I have a supervisor in the north and one in the south because the state's so big. And we have nursing education consultants in the southern part of the state as well as the northern part of the state under a supervisor. And so they also meet at different times with the different deans, directors, and faculty. So we really strive up to have a very collaborative relationship with them. And let's see, the other thing that we do is in our practice is related to our nursing practice issues, advanced practice issues, and my other program I forgot was our legislative committee. We have a legislative committee that looks at all of the legislation that may impact this Board of Registered Nursing. We follow approximately 30 to 35 cases, bills all of the time. And I have to say this, over the years in the history of this board, we have never been able to get approved for a position for a legislative person. So what we did in 2013, in June, we reallocated a position as a legislative analyst. Because what has happened in the past is that the nursing education consultant, like myself and some others and managers, we are in a classification that you work till the work gets done. So thereby, the legislative work has always been placed on top of the full load that the nursing education consultant has. And that's how we have been able to work and track our legislation. And so that means, and that says that they have to work more than a 40-hour week. Because it came up in, there was a question in here that referenced the fact, why didn't we use part-time nursing education consultants? And that would be very cumbersome and unrealistic, because when you go out on these programs, you may go out on the weekends. If there's weekend programs, you go on the evenings. You have to be available to them, as well as the nursing education consultants. There's one assigned every day to answer questions that come in about the scope of practice throughout California and some throughout the country, as well as all the emails that they have to address. So to have a part-time person in that kind of position would be really very, very cumbersome for us. And the other, I'm going to turn it now over to, let me bring you up to par where we are now before I turn it over to my board president. I want to make something very clear, is that back in 2011, the governor did not sign the bill, for us to, we call it, to continue. And it was alluded to in the background paper that the reason was a culmination of what happened in 2009. Well, in 2009, what happened there did not have an impact on what happened in 2011. Because 2009, that is when we had the negative press about the Board of Registered Nursing and how long it took us to really discipline nurses, and that some of the times it was maybe more than 3 years at that time. And so because of that, was under Governor Schwarzenegger. We had only 6 board members at that point in time. And so what happened was that 3 of those board members happened to be in their grace period, or they were coming off of the board because their term was up. They had communicated with the governor's office and was assured that they would be reappointed. But after that press, they were not reappointed. So we lost those 3. There was a 4th one that resigned, and there was a 5th one that stayed on the board. So the board ended up with 2 board members, one from the Speaker of the Assembly and one from the governor's office. So what happened then, the governor appointed 6 more members to that board, and then the Senate also assigned a person to that board. So that board continued on, but that was the reason behind that. Now in 2011, it was a different scenario. In 2011, we were we were going through sunset. There was a bill that was introduced for us, was our sunset bill. And in that bill, there was a provision that said that we could get special investigators and sworn investigators. Well, unbeknownst to the board and to myself, we did not know that Governor Brown had a concern about the sworn investigators. And we didn't find that out until 2 days, on that Friday, late Friday evening, when the governor was going to had to sign all the bills by that Friday. So that is what happened. But as we understand, after the fact, that the director, who was not Mr. Padani, it was a different director, and the deputy director of legislation for the Department of Consumer Affairs had been notified, but through some miscommunication, never communicated that to us, because the board at that time would have been happy, more than happy, to have taken those sworn investigators off of that, okay? So I'm bringing you up to that point, and so thereby we ended up not sunrising, and we ended up being we became under the Department of Consumer Affairs as a program. And then in 2012, exactly on February the 14th, we were reconstituted as a board again. And at that time, we got a board member from the Senate, and I believe it was in March, and then we got 4 more board members in May. And that's where we come up to this point, and this is the new board, and this is the president of the board, Mr. Malel.